here's the latest. And it's accurate, fair, you get the damn truth. Israel's military chief said Israel will respond to Iran's weekend missile strike. Hasn't elaborated on how or when they are considering their next steps. But he said, quote, it will be met with a response. Spoke during a visit to an Air Force base yesterday that suffered light damage in that Iranian attack. Benjamin Netanyahu has been huddling with officials to discuss it. World leaders have been telling Israel, please don't retaliate, please don't retaliate. And yet the world leaders are doing nothing against the country that instigated the attack on an innocent country. Nothing. They're just all pleading with Israel. You know what's sad, folks, is Iran is using the billions and billions of dollars that the Biden administration continues to send to them for the military hardware. And then we as taxpayers pay that. And we're also paying for the hundreds of millions of dollars worth of air defense that Israel is using to shoot down the drones and missiles that we paid for. We're funding a lot of both sides of that deal. The Biden administration did not stop the money going into Iran after the October 7th attack. And then we have pro-Palestinian demonstrators in our country screaming death to America, and death to Israel. They blocked the freeways and bridges into Chicago's airport yesterday, shutting down traffic there. Caused headaches for travelers. They even left their cars on the side of the road to walk to the airport so they wouldn't miss their flights. The demonstration was at 7 a.m. And now, folks, you know why the Biden administration is working to show that they are pro-Palestinian, trying to get all these votes back in Michigan, Minnesota, and other places around the country before the election. House Speaker Mike Johnson pushing for a vote on aid to Israel again. They've done it twice, and Chuck Schumer's Senate keeps turning them down. Why? Well, the vote count, folks. They have to appease that voting bloc that is anti-Israel. He said they're going to try it again. Tens of millions of Americans from Lincoln, Nebraska to Baltimore could be facing some more strong thunderstorms again today through tomorrow. Tornadoes possible. Large storm system hitting much of the central U.S., bringing severe weather and tornadoes. Kansas, Nebraska, other places along the route, Oklahoma, Missouri, Virginia, all face risks of severe weather through the middle of this week. Salvage crews at the site of Baltimore's collapsed Francis Scott Key Bridge are using the largest crane on the eastern seaboard now to remove sections of wreckage. 1,000 tons of steel have been removed from the waterways so far. They've opened a couple temporary channels. Crews are working containers from the cargo ship. Then it will return to the port of Baltimore for further inspection. The FBI's already boarded that, looking for possible issues. Someone with knowledge to the investigation said that a massive container ship that caused the collapse apparently experienced some electrical issues even hours before it left the port. Of course, that person hasn't stepped forward. It was just leaked as FBI agents continue their criminal investigation. 6 construction workers were killed. They have now recovered 4 of them. A 4th body was found in the underwater wreckage yesterday. They are still searching for 2 more. Synergy and Grace Ocean filed a court petition after the collapse. They want to limit their legal liability. The joint filing wants to cap the company's liability at $43.6 million. It estimates that the vessel itself was worth $90 million and was owed over $1.1 million from the incoming freight. The estimate also deducts 2 major expenses, $28 million in repair cost and $19.5 million for the salvage cost of that operation. General Motors was in the news yesterday. They're going to move from their Detroit headquarters to a new downtown office building next year and develop a new home along the Detroit River. Company and city officials confirmed that Monday. It's going to be the site of an old Hudson's department store, which is being developed into a tower and a 12-story office building that will house GM that was built by the Bedrock real estate firm. Bedrock will join GM and the city in coming up with ideas to remake that 7-building Renaissance Center. Mary Barra, who is GM CEO, is open to the idea about the complex. U.S. stocks slumped yesterday. Higher yields in the bond market put pressure on Wall Street. S&P lost 1.2%. The Dow slipped 0.7%. NASDAQ also down 1.8%. Stocks had been up earlier in the day, and the rising oil prices kind of tapered off somewhat yesterday. Oil at now $89 $9.76 a barrel. Gas prices around town went up again today. Average price in the U.S. now about $3.75 a gallon. China's economy beat their expectations in the first quarter of the year. The world's second largest economy expanded at a 5.3% annual pace, January through March, and that had beat what analysts had expected. Yesterday was tax day. Refunds are looking a little bigger for taxpayers this year. According to the IRS, the average refund this season so far has been $3,011. That's up $123 from where it was last year. 2 out of 3 taxpayers expect to get a refund from the IRS for their 23 taxes. Oh, and the Biden administration is handing out checks to everybody, students, you name it, all across the board. Now they've reached an agreement to give $6.4 billion in funding to Samsung Electronics to develop a computer chip manufacturing center down in Texas. An investment into that cluster expected to exceed $40 billion. The government support comes from the CHIPS and Science Act that he signed in 2022 to help advance our own computer chips domestically. Samsung will be the beneficiary of that money. After reporting dismal first quarter sales, Tesla is laying off a tenth of their workforce. They're trying to cut costs. Elon Musk detailed the plans. Memo sent to employees. The layoffs could affect 14,000 of their 140,000 workers employed by the Austin, Texan company. Memo said Tesla's preparing for the next phase. It has to look at every aspect of the company and cost cut and increase productivity. Manufacturing sector last month, folks, in the United States added 0 jobs. In fact, we're losing them. But government is growing at the fastest pace it's ever seen. 71,000 new government jobs just last month alone. Every month, we're adding a city larger than Bozeman to the government payrolls. Maker of a popular weed killer turning to lawmakers in key states to try to squelch legal claims that they failed to warn about the cancer risks. Bayer disputing claims. They've already paid out $10 billion to resolve them. Thousands of lawsuits still remaining. Bayer has supported legislation in Iowa, Idaho, and Missouri that would shield pesticide and herbicide companies from failure to warn claims if they use the labels approved by the Environmental Protection Agency. Legal experts warn it could have broader consequences, extending any product liability claim or providing immunity from lawsuits of any kind. Critics said it could spread nationwide. Nissan's in the news. They expect to mass produce electric vehicles powered by advanced next-generation batteries by 2029. Japan's legacy automakers have fallen behind rivals like Tesla and others in that sector of the auto industry, but Nissan sees a chance to catch up and perhaps even leap ahead with a new kind of battery that they promise will be more powerful, it will be cheaper, it will be safer, and it will be faster to charge than the lithium-ion batteries that are used today. Solid-state batteries are widely seen as the next step for the EVs as they race to get these things produced because the Biden administration's holding a gun to their head about how many they have to have by 2030. Supreme Court with a decision out. They will allow Idaho to enforce their ban on gender-affirming care for the youngest of the young while the lawsuits proceed. The justices on Monday said they allowed the state to put in place their law that subjects a physician to prison if they provide hormones, puberty blockers, surgery to these kids that are under the age of 18. Under the Supreme Court's order, 2 transgender teens sued to challenge the law. The court's 3 liberal justices said they would have kept that law on hold. A federal judge in Idaho blocked it in its entirety, saying it was necessary to do so to protect the teenagers, and the Supreme Court will allow Idaho to enforce it. In a meticulously choreographed ceremony yesterday, the flame for the Summer Paris Olympics will be lit, that's today, at the Olympic Games in Greece. It will then be carried through Greece, 3,100 miles. You got to be careful when you carry a flame through Greece. Any good fireman will tell you that's asking for trouble.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. 3,100 miles. Then they'll hand it over to the French. The French, of course, in Paris, hosting the Olympics. The pageantry has become essential, and it's meant to link the modern Olympics to the ancient Greek inspiration. And so that torch remains lit and stays lit throughout the course of the year and over the years until the next Olympics. That is so bad. An eternal flame, folks. Do you get it?
What? You did Grease and Fire?
What did I tell you about my musicologist over here? Huh? A guy from Ottawa coming last in the class if he was in this room. So anyway, they're lighting the torch, and it should be heading over to Paris anytime soon.
In sports, WNBA draft last night. I watched about an hour of it. I wanted to see what was going on in a sport that is growing in popularity thanks to number 1 overall pick Caitlin Clark. The 3 gals doing the interviewing, I didn't care for before the draft. It was a little like watching The View, but talking about basketball, and then have all these individual players stop by. Hey, Paul, we think you're going number 1 in the draft. Where did you get that flannel shirt? Who dressed you for tonight's event?
Oh, yeah, that was a big thing?
It was a big thing.
Fashion, huh?
So Caitlin Clark goes to Indiana, and that 6'7" Cardoso from South Carolina went second, and Angel Reese went 8th. And so now they're trying to predict who's going to do what. But Scott Van Pelt asked Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi about how they thought that Caitlin Clark was going to do when she got to the NBA. And she said, look, Taurasi said, it's a different game here. You're not playing with 19-year-old girls, and it's going to be rough, and people are not going to be nice to you at the start.
Yeah, well, she was drafted, and she made it.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, And
did you ever play in any basketball game where some guy tried to guard you closely?
I like when Lisa Leslie yesterday said she definitely has to be at the Olympics.
Yeah.
You can't have an Olympics without Caitlin Clark.
I agree.
And she's the biggest thing in women's basketball now. So.
My favorite part of the draft, and I'm glad I watched as long as I did, Caitlin Clark got drafted, did her interviews, got held up the jersey, and then walked backstage. And backstage, you know who's waiting to hug her? Jake from State Farm.
Oh, really? That's nice. I'm going to Disneyland.
That's right.
Great. Well, we're going to hit about 62 today. There's a 50% chance of showers. Going to be windy again, folks. 40-mile-an-hour winds today. Tonight, 80% chance of moisture. Overnight, 42 for the high tomorrow. 50% chance. After that, we're going to freeze a couple nights in a row. Red Lodge is expecting snow at that elevation. And what's Red Lodge elevation? Is that a mile? I think it was 55 or something.
5,500 feet, yeah.
Yeah. So the upper elevations are going to possibly get snow. Hey Siri, what's the elevation of Red Lodge, Montana?
Red Lodge is 5,068
5,568 feet. So there you go. So it's just going to happen. We're in that spring pattern. It'll warm up next week. Always does. 52 now. Sun's just coming up. You can see it hitting the airport control tower up there. Smooth sailing if you're flying or traveling, and that's what's happening. I'm Paul Mussaben along with musicologist Mark Wilson. Thanks for tuning into the cat. You know his name was Farmer. Jeez.